And it's time to say a very good morning to John Rentoul. With just 3 days to go, we'll finally all be able to get some sleep. John, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I hear you're expecting a new Prime Minister on Thursday.
Well, I think whatever happens, there will be a new Prime Minister on Friday, won't there? Because, you know, it'll be a new broom. Even if it's Rishi Sunak, he'll be a new Prime Minister, albeit that he was the old Prime Minister as well. Because, I mean, currently... Nobody, I mean, it's like I'm always reminded of that time when John Major kind of decided to throw himself out to the public and say, you know, sort of back me or sack me. And at one point there was no real Prime Minister in the country. And I remember the front page cartoon, The Telegraph, had a picture of an alien and a guy standing there saying, "Sorry, I'm sorry, we haven't got one at the moment." In answer to his question, "Take me to your leader."
Yeah, well, as Rishi said yesterday, it's not over until it's over.
Yeah, well, he can say that as much as he likes, but I mean, a lot of people have been saying it was over as soon as he announced it. But I mean, I'm not one of them because we can't speculate in that way. But I mean, it doesn't look as if the odds have changed. It doesn't look as if the polls have moved. It's still a 20-point gap. The only thing for me, which will be a surprise, I think, and you may not share the view, is that I think Reform are going to do a lot better than everybody thinks.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you, Mike. I think Reform are going to do well. I think the Conservatives are going to do possibly worse than everybody thinks. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting night on Thursday night.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping you might be able to pop in and spend some time with us. I don't know if you're going to be touring the studios in your normal fashion. You may be going to somewhere where you know, they give you better cakes and better drinks. But you know, we'll be here if you care to pop in. I mean, I watched at the weekend with some interest. Pat McFadden was on Laura Kuenssberg's show, and you know, once he was put on the spotlight and put under pressure by Laura Kuenssberg to kind of explain precisely what was going to happen with some of the Labour Party policies, he wasn't very good at being specific, because they're still trying to be a bit vague, aren't they?
Yes, they're being extremely cautious, trying not to answer questions. I thought you're absolutely right. He was put on the defensive on Labour's claim that they would take £300 off energy bills, which Pat McFadden said was sort of indicative of the sorts of things that could happen if you had if you had more renewable energy, which is exactly the same argument that Rishi Sunak uses to say that Labour's going to put up your taxes by £2,000.
Right.
When you get pressed on that, he doesn't. You know, I mean, he says it's all been worked out, but I mean, his real argument is that's just an example of the sorts of things you might expect from a Labour government.
Well, as Laura said, it's an aspiration rather than a fact, and that's the problem, isn't it, with all of these manifestos, because they've come to the conclusion, haven't they, clearly, that if they say it's fully costed, it's fully costed, but of course it isn't fully costed. They just say it is.
No, absolutely. And, you know, Labour are going around using the L word, calling it a lie, that they're going to put up taxes by £2,000, and yet when they make an exactly equivalent promise in the opposite direction, that's of course fully costed and absolutely true.
Right.
I'm afraid that it has been. I mean, my hero of the campaign has been Paul Johnson, the boss of the Institute for Fiscal Studies.
Yes.
Who says that there's been a conspiracy of silence from both parties about the state of the public finances after the election.
Yeah, exactly right. Because he says that neither of the main parties' manifestos actually stands up to financial scrutiny in any way, shape, or form, does it?
No, I agree, and I think that is actually true. It may be that the voters don't mind, because the voters sort of know what they're getting into anyway. Trust in politics is low. People are pretty disillusioned, and that's why I think Reform is going to do well. I think the Conservatives are going to do badly, and people who are voting Labour want change. They don't have any high expectations of what a Labour government will do, but they think it'll be better than this lot.
Right. And I mean, how important do you think the turnout is going to be? Because obviously a lot of people think it might be quite a low turnout. Does that help Labour? Does it help the Tories?
Well, no, it's the other way round though, Mike, isn't it? I mean, the turnout will be low because the Conservatives are doing badly. I think there'll be a lot of Conservative voters who will stay at home.
Right.
And I think that will be why turnout is low. So, you know, turnout isn't just sort of something that happens on its own. It is the result of people reacting to what they see in front of them.
Yes, no, I get that, but does that mean though that the Labour Party will benefit from a low turnout?
Yeah, I think it will, because it'll be Conservative inclined voters who will be staying at home. So yeah, that's another reason for thinking that Conservatives will do worse than people are expecting.
Right, and up in Scotland, and I saw a projection at the weekend that suggested the SNP will probably only get somewhere between 15 and 20 votes, which means they're going to lose quite a few.
15 to 20 seats, yeah, that's right.
Seats, yeah.
Yeah, no, they're going to lose a huge number, and they're going to end up with being outnumbered by Labour in Scotland. I mean, that really does have implications for the next Scottish Parliament elections, which is what the SNP is really worried about. But that's one reason why the Labour, if there is a Labour majority, it's going to be huge, because Labour hasn't had those seats in Scotland for the past few elections, and to have whatever it is, 25, 30 seats in Scotland is going to be a huge boost.
Right, and Rishi Sunak has been a bit more robust, I suppose you might say, in the last week or two than he was at the start of the campaign, which is now I think in its 6th week. But it's a bit too late, isn't it, for him?
I'm afraid, yeah. As you were saying at the start, Mike, I think it's too late right from the start of the campaign, and actually, it was probably too late from the moment that Rishi Sunak made those 5 promises at the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was too late when he took over as Prime Minister, because he's inheriting a very difficult situation. But I think looking back, I think his crucial mistake was to make those 5 promises at the beginning of last year, without having any idea of how he was going to fulfil them. I mean, obviously, inflation was coming down anyway. That was the only one he's actually satisfactorily met. And to have promised to stop the boats, I mean, to stop the boats completely, was always a daft idea, and it's come back to bite him.
Yeah, of course, as has the NHS waiting list, which he inexplicably sort of told us all that they'd gone down, but then they went back up again when he was having that rather bizarre conversation with Keir Starmer when he was doing the debate. But, he's a kind of hapless individual, isn't he? I mean, I think every time I watch him, you can see in his eyes that he can't quite understand why nobody gets it, why nobody realises that he's the smartest guy in the room, why nobody understands that, he's really, really good at his job, and why he can't understand why he's so unpopular.
No, well, I think it must be quite difficult, actually, because he had a golden career until it all went, until he got the top job.
Right. I mean, maybe it's a lesson to people not to get into politics.
Well, I think you've got to give him credit for trying.
Not really. No, I don't think so. Sorry, we're not in the game. We're not in the business of giving people credit for trying. It's like saying, England, got to give them credit for turning up and playing in the way that they did. No, that's their job. You're supposed to win.
Well, in that case, you've got to give Keir Starmer credit for, whatever you think about him, he has achieved a remarkable feat of taking a party that was flat on its back, completely discredited under Jeremy Corbyn, lost the last election incredibly badly. I mean, record low. And here he is on the brink of a majority even bigger than Tony Blair's. I mean, it is one of the most extraordinary turnarounds in
it is, politics. And I mean, I would perhaps reluctantly give him credit for that, but I'm wondering whether or not the Tories kind of handed it to him on a plate. I recognise that he did some things about cleaning up the party and getting rid of the anti-Semites and some of the more crazy elements of the Labour movement, but they're still kind of lurking around somewhere, and I wonder whether after the election they'll all come creeping back out of the woodwork.
Well, that's that is one of the Tory attacks, although it's completely contradicted by the other Tory attack, which is that if you vote Labour with a big majority, they might be in government for the rest of your life. Which I was interested in. The Tory broadcast yesterday defined the rest of your life as 2044, which suggests that it's addressed very much at voters who are about 60 now.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's nice of them, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. I mean, but to suggest that Labour is going to be in power for the rest of your life, but it is also going to turn out to be extremely left wing and dodgy once it's in, doesn't compute, because I mean, presumably, if Labour does turn out to be extremely left-wing and therefore unpopular once it gets in, then they're going to get chucked out pretty smartly.
Well, presumably there will be others in the sort of establishment system that, if they go completely, crazy left wing, that will just reject it all, and it will all fall apart like it did for Liz Truss, but for a different reason.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Labour is going to go crazy left wing. I think everything we know about Keir Starmer suggests that's not the case. I think Angela Rayner will certainly position herself as slightly to the left of Keir Starmer. It very much in the way that Gordon Brown did with Tony Blair. We're back to that old drama, because the only interesting thing in politics will be what's happening in the Labour Party. Nobody will be interested in what's happening in the Tories.
No, well, I think it was you that said that the main opposition to the Labour Party when they get in will be the Labour Party.
Yeah, absolutely. But the idea that Labour, if Labour gets a large majority, it's going to be in there for the rest of people's lives. I think it's just the weirdest political attack in a series of extremely strange Tory adverts that we've seen in this campaign.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, Ed Davey also, he's sort of promoting today a Liberal Democrat pledge to spend $440 million a year on supporting widows and bereaved children during their toughest moments. I'm not quite sure what that really means. Does that mean he's planning to hand out money to people who, for one reason or another, happen to be bereaved?
Well, but I mean, there already are widows' pensions and widows' benefits. I'm not quite sure, and presumably he wants them to be more generous, and I'm sure they ought to be. But I mean, it's a question of priorities, isn't it?
Well, exactly right.
The Lib Dem campaign is a little bit Corbynite in that respect.
Right. I mean, do you believe any of these stories that they could end up being the main opposition?
Well, I think it's possible. Yes, arithmetically, it is possible because they're going to do extremely well. I mean, if the Tory vote sinks as badly as I think it might, all sorts of strange things start happening. I mean, there are all sorts of seats across the south of England,
right,
that could fall to the Lib Dems. And you could get to a situation where the Lib Dems and the Tories are very close on say 70 seats each.
Right. And could you have a sort of coalition of opposition in that sense?
Right. The Lib Dems, I think the last time the Lib Dems went into coalition with the Tories, it didn't end well for them. So no, I don't think that's going to happen. No. But it'll be. People have been speculating about what happens if they've got exactly the same number of seats, because then the Speaker has to decide which one is the official opposition. I mean, we'll wait and see if we're in that sort of. But
that's what I'm wondering. I mean, obviously with Reform being tipped now to get somewhere in the region of possibly 7 seats. I mean, that may be optimistic, but I don't think it is. If the Tories and Lib Dems had the same number of seats, Reform could get into bed with the Tories, and suddenly they're the opposition.
Absolutely. Or there's another wild theory doing the rounds that Labour could subcontract some of its MPs to the Lib Dems.
Oh, really?
To give them some extra MPs to push them over the line to make them the official opposition.
Right.
All sorts of things could happen if the Lib Dems and the Tories are close in numbers.
And one of the big rows that's been going on at the moment, as you say, about the Sunak-Starmer axis, is Rishi Sunak saying, if Labour get in 100 days, they'll destroy the country, which is a damn sight quicker than the Tories, who took 14 years to do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, but which is it? I mean, either Labour's going to destroy the country in 100 days and presumably be extremely unpopular and be chucked out of office, or they're going to be in office for the rest of your life. The Conservatives cannot make up their mind how to attack the Labour Party at the moment.
And one of the things that people are talking about as well is that very shortly after this weekend, I don't know if it's exactly straight into next week, but there's a massive NATO summit going on in the United States of America, which loads of world leaders will turn up and presumably try and make sure that Joe Biden stays awake for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, actually, if Keir Starmer is Prime Minister on Friday, he's got a rather busy few weeks ahead of him, because he's got NATO, he's got presumably he's got a King's Speech of legislation set out, and he's also got this European political community on 2 weeks after the election, which he's supposed to be hosting at Blenheim Palace. I mean, that's going to be a very interesting forum for him to set out what the Labour government's attitude to Europe is going to be.
Yeah, right. Because we don't know really about that either. That was another question that was put to Pat McFadden at the weekend. What exactly do you mean? And he ended up saying, well, if they don't want to offer us anything, then we won't be doing anything. And that was kind of killed that one stone dead, because they're not going to.
Yeah, no, and I think it is right that the Labour government isn't going to go back into the single market or a customs union, but we just don't know what its attitude is going to be, and whether it's going to try to negotiate some kind of better trade deal.
Yeah,
we'll be waiting on the edge of our seats.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we shall see. Who knows what could happen in the next 3 days? But nothing probably terribly serious. John, thank you very much indeed. John Rentoul, chief political commentator there from The Independent.